My dad is named after his uncle, Poppy Orrin's brother, who was killed by rolling logs up at camp where his mother, my great-grandmother Inez Bateman, was a cook. That's his death certificate, killed by rolling log. The men were away and she couldn't get the logs off her son, George Leslie Good, who was born on this very land, as was my father and his father. And his father, William George, was born on the other side at Rough Waters, where the original farmhouse still stands, where his father, William A. Good, immigrated at age 2 and lived his entire life in Rough Waters until moving to this side of the river. George Leslie's mother, my great-grandmother, Inez Bateman, is daughter of William Swanton Bateman and sister of Yukon lady Emma Melinda Bateman Smythe. That's my dad, my uncle the toddler, my grandfather Orrin, and Emma behind him in the bottom right picture. My 3 times great-grandfather John Good lost a son, John Good Jr., buried under clay in International Railway. He died later that same year after losing his son. I have imagined him being buried under the banks of this bridge, as there is no information about him being recovered and buried elsewhere. This is also the same tracks where I lost my sister Jenny and Aunt Penny in a car accident, where the tracks go under the Big River Road just west of here by Glendennings. Moving forward, in 1884, James Good decided to join his brother John A. Good in Wisconsin and sold his lot 14 South to William Branch. He left their uncle Robert Good, William A. Good's brother, in charge of collecting the money from William Branch. They transferred John A. Good's north half of Lot 15 to William A. Good that year, but the deed came from John E. O'Brien to William A. Good. Again, John A. Good still owns Lot 15 North, and his brother Walter now owns Lot 15 South, through that weird deed from Kennedy F. Burns. We've seen how it's not a legitimate deed, but it tries to hold interest in the riverfront. Anyway, this deed is Volume 31, 109, page 136, November 24, 1884. It transfers it to William A. Good. This is the marked-up copy of the deed Service New Brunswick sent me to prove we don't own our riverfront. It clearly states reserved as a fishing privilege for John E. O'Brien. He doesn't even cite how he claims to own this land to sell it. Now, my family doesn't have a copy of this deed, and I don't think it exists, as a real paper deed from John A. has the real deed from Sam and Isabella Branch, Volume 27, Deed 67, page 136, April 17, 1879. We can, however, find deeds of where John E. O'Brien is the grantee or buyer of land, and see if any deeds match this property, and there is one. You can see on this list where William Good sells John E. O'Brien his property on the Rough Water side of the river, Volume 19, 345 in 1866. So my family knows the O'Briens. But here's an interesting deed from William James O'Brien to John E. O'Brien for Lot 15 North. I'll show you on the next slide. The same person making the dirty deed to Kennedy F. Burns, then to Walter Good for Lot 15 South. Volume 30, Deed 57, page 110. Oh, and look, and there's that fake deed William James O'Brien made from Robert Rankin in the registry. So this deed from William J. O'Brien to his father, John E. O'Brien, July 5, 1883, looks pretty legit. Volume 30, Deed 57, page 110. Saving and accepting, those words everyone freaks out about. Entire waterfront and fishing privilege, and also saving and accepting a right-of-way for foot passage, etc., over any part of the said lands, to and from the strip of land. Well, when I seen this, I immediately searched for that easement to and from on the Service New Brunswick website, and thankfully there was not one showing. But after talking to New Brunswick Power, they said they could, in fact, build a road across any part of our property to get to the river according to that deed. I also discussed it with the registrar, and he just laughed like I was stupid and said that's a very dangerous agreement to enter into, as if my ancestors had actually done that. But both Service New Brunswick and New Brunswick Power are using this deed in the chain that, quote, proves we don't own the land, unquote. This is a fake deed, which I showed them and I will show you. The registrar's argument was that saving and accepting means keeping out a portion of the land for yourself. I asked then, how can you save and accept passage over any part of the land? That would mean you are keeping it all. What saving and accepting actually means is there is an agreement, like an easement. Like you are retaining mineral rights or access, not actual land. Besides, if that's what it meant, then why would you say it was for fishing privileges? If it means you are keeping real property, you don't need to specify what for. Just the fact that they are saying saving and accepting for fishing privileges tells you exactly what they are saving. And here in this email, New Brunswick Power is very clearly stating that they hold the right of way or access, and if I wanted it removed, I'd have to jump through a bunch of hoops. Turns out she's been sending emails like this to others for over a decade, knowing nothing will happen or get fixed, even when we jump through those hoops. And this is after she acknowledges our family had lawfully owned the property, after I showed her our lawful chain of title. But she's still not going to do anything other than pass the info on to the executives, whoever they are. Frustrating. But none of that matters. Again, William James O'Brien isn't saying in the deed how he owns the land to sell it, but I found it. In this deed, volume 29, 161, page 234, August 11th, 1882, it claims James Nevins, Esquire, blacksmith of Newcastle, formerly Bathurst, sells the north half of Lot 15 to William James O'Brien, 100 acres, for $50. Notarized by John E. O'Brien, William James O'Brien's father. Registered August 17, 1882. But wait, James Nevins Jr. doesn't own this land in 1882. He sold it to John Ferguson in 1870, 12 years earlier. And Ferguson doesn't even own it anymore. He sold it to Sam and Isabella Branch in 1875. And they don't even own it anymore. They sold it to my John A. Good in 1879. So William James O'Brien is transferring it from John A. Good to William A. Good using a fake deed, making it out to be his. So he, like Kennedy F. Burns 2 days before, can retain fishing privileges of both north and south of Lot 15. One more thing. Remember that deed from Robert Rankin where Rankin supposedly sells William James O'Brien lots 15, 21, and 34, even though Rankin never owns them? Why would William James O'Brien buy the north half of Lot 15 from Nevins, who doesn't even own it anymore, if he just bought the entire Lot 15 from Rankin for $200 exactly 1 month ago? I tell you now, this is why these bad, fake, illegitimate deeds never survived the 1800s. So, based on the deeds that actually trace back to real deeds, in 1879, John A. Good owns entire Lot 15. In 1883, Walter Good acquires the south half of Lot 15, and in 1884, William A. Good acquires the north half of Lot 15. No one is disputing this at the time, not even the O'Briens, as they are the notaries going forward. In June of 1885, Walter Good sells the north half of the south half of Lot 15, volume 31, 313, page 45, bounded on the east by the Nipisiguit River, the south by the other part of the said lot owned by the said Walter Good, on the north by another portion of the said lot owned by William Good, meaning William A., and on the west by the rear line, and contains 50 acres. Save and accept the front at the big river mentioned in the deed from Kennedy F. Burns to the said Walter Good. Now you can say this means it's saved for Kennedy F. Burns. It doesn't say fishing. The boundary is clearly the river. There's no 200-foot exception. But if you want to go back to Kennedy F. Burns' deed, he doesn't even own it because he got it from William J. O'Brien, who didn't own it, because he got it from Rankin, who didn't own it. The only one who owns it, including the riverfront, is John A. Good, and his agreement with Ivers Adams, and now William A. Good, who, as an heir to John A., has a right to all grass and crops, as does Walter, for both the north and south half. Adams has 66 feet or one chain he can hang out on. He has no right to grow crops, he has no right to build structures or cut wood, but he is allowed access from the road. On October 2nd, 1885, William A. Good deeds the north and south halves of Lot 15 to his sons Robert and William George, respectively. Volume 31, 390 and 391, still retaining the fishing privileges for John E. O'Brien. These are both notarized by John E. O'Brien's son, William James O'Brien. So William James O'Brien is aware he's reserving the fishing privileges for his father of Lot 15 North in 1885. Now, not to get too messy, but in 1885, the Crown has full authority over fishing privileges and leases, not landowners or merchants, which is why there is no longer any mention of the 200 feet or right-of-way or access. This again tells me that this is what the farmers' agreements were in the first place, and okay for people to fish from their shore. We do have all the physical deeds from 1882 going forward, and they are word for word what is in the registry. I apologize for this being so messy. There's just so much information. But anyway, of the 200 acres of Lot 15 as of October 1885, William George has the north 50 acres, then Robert has the next 50 acres. Their dad, William A., has the next 50 acres that he got from Walter Good, and finally Walter has the last or southmost 50 acres.